Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next live stream. I'll be your producer for this session. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today. Thank you for joining.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to this day-to-day session on the Microsoft DP-700 Fabric Data Engineer Associate. I'm Philip Burton, and I'm joined by Alexei Partanen. Hello, Alexei.
Hello.
Hi. Well, I'm from a small town to the east of Nottingham in England. Alexei, where are you broadcasting from today?
I'm coming from Helsinki, Finland, the land of the Santa Claus.
And everyone at home, where are you from? Please let us know in the comments. So the purpose of today's session is to have a high-level view of Microsoft Fabric. In this way, you can determine whether the DP-700 exam is for you.
Okay, and I will introduce myself first. So, hello everyone, my name is Alexei Partanen. I'm Microsoft MVP and data architect at Norin, and then I also do a lot of educational stuff related to Microsoft Fabric. I have my YouTube channel, Alexei Partanen Master Microsoft Fabric. There I have an 11-hour course for Microsoft Fabric. Or especially for DP-700. I also have some DP-600 content if you're studying for that exam. Then I have some other platforms that I have created, and the first one is Fabric Forge, that is basically a learning community that has hands-on tutorials and study guides for certification exams, and it is a free to join community, so you can get a lot of content there for free. And then I have a dedicated platform for practicing the certification exams called CertiAce. There you find practice questions, practice exams, practice case studies, and all that good stuff that you need to pass those exams on the first try. And all of those resources can be found by going to my Linktree address there by scanning that QR code or going to the Linktree/Alexei Partanen. But yeah, maybe that's about me. What about you, Philip? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Well, I'm Philip Burton of idodata.com, and I've been creating video courses on a range of computer subjects, largely about Microsoft exams, since 2015, and are now of over 70 of them, including the DP-700, DP-600, and so on. So I started to get into Microsoft Fabric from around 2023, when it was first mentioned in several conference sessions, and then the DP-600 was announced in late 2023. So if you want any of my socials, then you can see them on the screen. So Alexei, this session is part of the Microsoft Data Days. So what are the Data Days?
Yeah, Data Days is a huge learning event that allows you to learn a lot of new things about data and AI, and it is powered by Microsoft and Microsoft community. And like I said, you are now watching one of the sessions that is part of the Data Days. And if you want to find out more about Data Days and different sessions that we have, there are a ton of different sessions, ton of different topics. Scan that QR code or go to aka.ms/datadays to find out more. And maybe we can go to the next slide. And one of the highlights of the Data Days is, of course, that you can get Microsoft Fabric or SQL certified for free. This means that you can get DP-700, DP-600, or DP-800 certified for free, which is an amazing opportunity. And I would highly recommend grabbing one of those free vouchers and getting certified. And then if you need some help along the journey, one of the good ways is to join a study group. And if you want to join a study group, there is also URL for that. That is aka.ms/td/study group, and also check that out. And then if you want to find these different communities related to Fabric and SQL, then you can go to the aka.ms/dd/connect to find other people that are also on the same journey and part of this huge worldwide data community. And then there are some contests and hands-on challenges that are part of the database. And if you are interested in those, there is a link for that. So aka.ms/dd/create, and there you can find out more about those. And then we have the Power BI and database things. And Philip, would you like to tell about this?
Well, this is a way for you to show how good your visualizations can be. So you can create, compete, and showcase your work with thousands of others across the globe. So the last one was in FabCon in Vienna in September last year, and there were 4 finalists, one of whom almost didn't even enter. So you never know if you don't try. So they had 20 minutes to produce their visualization. So they already had the data. They were able to plan the visualizations beforehand, but only 20 minutes to create them. And they were very good. So please use the QR code to book your spot in the finals in Barcelona in September. Now, do you want to influence the future of Fabric and SQL? If so, there are 3 different user groups that you might be interested in. There's the Fabric user panel. This panel will host Fabric-related research studies and other feedback efforts where you can voice your opinion directly with Fabric product managers, designers, researchers, and engineering teams. Then there's the Fabric IQ user panel. The Microsoft Fabric team is looking for people with experience or interest in ontologies, knowledge graphs, and enterprise data modeling to share feedback directly with the product team. And then finally, there's the SQL user panel. How do you do across SQL environments, on-premises, in Azure, in Microsoft Fabric, in hybrid setups? If you're open to sharing your feedback and real-world stories with the broader SQL product team, then please sign up to the SQL user panel today. So what's coming after this particular session? Well, sessions continue through to the 6th of August, and on screen you can see a few of them. Tomorrow, there's a session on the DP-600 Fabric Analytics Engineer Exam Essentials. This tests your skill in advanced DAX and an introduction to Fabric, including lakehouses and warehouses. And next week, there are sessions on the PL300 Power BI Data Analyst Exam, which is all about Power BI Desktop and the Power BI service. And there's a session on which data exam fits you best and what to expect on your exam day and hopefully how to pass.
Okay, and next we are going to meet our amazing moderators that are in the chat and answering all of your Fabric-related questions. And first we have one of my good friends, Teemu there, who is also from Finland, and Teemu is an MCT and senior data engineer, and you can find Teemu's LinkedIn there. Teemu posts quite frequently to LinkedIn, and Teemu is also teaching topics in Fabric Forge. And one more thing about Teemu, today is Teemu's birthday, so chat, please say happy birthday, Teemu, to chat, so that Teemu will be super happy and having an amazing birthday here moderating this session. But yeah, maybe let's move to the next moderator. Then we have Alpa, who is a Microsoft data platform MVP like I am, and she's also in the chat. And then we have one more moderator, Askier, who is also Microsoft data platform MVP, and there you can find some of his social links if you would like to follow him on LinkedIn or Blue Sky. There you can find those.
So yes. On screen, you can see some additional resources to help you with the DP-700 exam. In addition to our courses on the DP-700, there's also a QR code to the DP-700 prep resources. And these include a link to the Microsoft Fabric community, to the official DP-700 exam page, to a 7-series session recorded in mid-2025, and this goes more in depth into the various topics than we can do in an hour, to the practice assessment, study guide, Microsoft Learn modules, and tips from the community. So for more information about how to learn the DP-700, please have a look at these QR codes. So in today's session, we will have a high-level look at some of the major topics in the DP-700 exam. So broadly, this exam tests your knowledge of implementing and managing analytic solutions, ingesting and transforming data, and monitoring and optimizing solutions. And there's equal weighting to each of these three parts. So this certification is aimed at data engineers who work with modern analytic solutions, particularly those involving data ingestion, transformation, and orchestration. So you might be a data engineer without knowing it. And it's not just about moving data. It's about designing end-to-end solutions that are secure, scalable, and optimized for performance. For this exam, you'll be expected to understand how to work across the Fabric ecosystem, loading data, shaping it, and ensuring that it's reliable and well managed. Monitoring and tuning your solutions is also a big part of this role, so performance and troubleshooting skills really matter. From a technical point of view, you should be comfortable at working with tools like SQL, PySpark, and KQL, and understand when to use each in a real-world scenario. And then finally, this is a collaborative role. You're working with analysts, architects, and other stakeholders to deliver data solutions that actually drive insights. The key is that we need to be comfortable with how to accomplish all of these within the SaaS platform, Microsoft Fabric. So let's take a closer look at what the DP-700 exam actually covers. And on screen, you can see a summary of the study guide. For more details of each individual section, please have a look at the full study guide. The link is at the bottom of the screen. So at a high level, everything is centered around building and managing analytics solutions in Microsoft Fabric. And one big theme here is Fabric's unified approach. Instead of jumping between lots of separate tools, you're working within a single environment that handles ingestion, transformation, and monitoring. So understanding how these pieces fit together is really important for the exam. So the skills fall in three main areas. First, implementing and managing solutions. Things like Spark, Domain, OneLake, and Dataflow Gen 2 workspace configuration. Lifecycle management using version control, database projects, and deployment pipelines. And security and governance and orchestration. Secondly, ingesting and transforming data, both batch and streaming. So this is when your PySpark, SQL, and KQL skills will come in really useful. And thirdly, monitoring and optimizing, making sure everything runs efficiently and fixing issues when they arise. So the study guide that you can see on the right of the screen contains a list of granular skills that are covered in the exam. It's not meant to be exhaustive, but these 52 skills are a great place to start to ensure you've studied and practiced everything that will be included in the certification exam, or alternatively, everything you need to know to work as a data engineer using Microsoft Fabric. So out of these three skills, the first of these is implement and manage an analytics solution in Microsoft Fabric. So over to you, Alexi.
Yes, thank you, Philip. So let's move to the first real slide that we have about this topic, that is about data ingestion in Fabric. Basically, Fabric is your modern data platform, and there are many different ways to ingest data to Fabric, and there are some really cool new capabilities that we can see on this slide. There are, for example, shortcuts in Fabric that we can see at the bottom of this slide. And what are shortcuts? Basically, shortcuts are a way to visualize data via Fabric. So you don't actually physically copy the data from those source systems. For example, if you have data sitting in AWS S3 bucket or in Azure Data Lake somewhere, you don't have to physically copy data to Fabric's OneLake. You can just create a shortcut to that data and then show it via OneLake. And also, we are going to dive a bit more into what is OneLake in next slide, but it's basically this unified data store that sits underneath the Fabric. But maybe let's go back, Philip, to the previous slide for a moment, because we are also having mirroring here. And mirroring is also another cool way to ingest data into Fabric. And what mirroring basically means, like the name already implies, it means mirroring your data, meaning basically creating a copy of your database to Fabric OneLake. So basically, if you have, for example, on-premises SQL Server database or SQL Server in Azure, or many other databases are nowadays supported for mirroring, you can just set up mirroring, and then that data will be replicated near real time to Fabric, which is a really cool new technology and a new way of ingesting data to the platform without needing to build like traditional ETL pipelines. So both like shortcuts and mirroring make data ingestion a lot easier in Fabric. And now maybe let's go to the next slide. And let's talk about data storage in Fabric. So, like I already mentioned, we have this OneLake that is sitting underneath in Fabric. And OneLake is built on top of the same data technology as Azure Data Lake Storage, or ADLS Gen 2. So basically, you can store any type of data to OneLake, even though the default data format and preferred data format in OneLake is Delta Parquet. That is very modern open source data format that is, for example, used in Azure Databricks. But yes, OneLake is this unified underlying data lake that is underneath the Fabric, and there's only one OneLake per Fabric. And now somebody could be wondering, well, okay, we have OneLake, but then we have Lakehouse and, for example, Warehouse. Why would when I use OneLake, when I use Lakehouse, when I use Warehouse, that can be a bit confusing for some people. But the thing there is that actually when you are storing your data to Lakehouse and Warehouse, you are actually storing it to OneLake under the hood. And those are like primary interfaces that are interacting with the data sitting in the OneLake. So both of those data store data to OneLake under the hood. And that's like the core idea of OneLake, to be this unified data lake for entire organization. And then you can use those other data ingestion methods like shortcuts and mirroring for bringing data there, and also some other tools like pipelines that we're going to be covering shortly. But Philip, do you have something you want to add about OneLake or data storage in Fabric in general?
Well, I think with Fabric, it's how all of these different solutions come together and work as a unified whole. So when you combine with features like shortcuts and mirroring, OneLake becomes a centralized but flexible data estate across multiple clouds. So it's how everything works together. That's the key, I think, in Fabric.
Yeah, I totally agree that that's a nice part of Fabric. And maybe we can go to the next slide then. And when we talk about data platforms, typically data integration and orchestration things are a core part of it, because we want to ingest data and integrate data, and then of course we want to orchestrate things. And of course in Fabric we have many different tools for doing those things. And there are, for example, tools like Dataflow Gen 2, that is more of a data transformation tool that allows you to build these data transformation pipelines and logic with this low/no-code interface by dragging and dropping some nodes there and configuring them. It's like Power Query-based transformation tools that has also quite many data integration capabilities. And then we have data pipelines. That is also like I would say data integration tools more than data transformation tool, because it has very limited data transformation capabilities in itself. It can copy data, modify data types, and that kind of things. But the cool thing about pipeline tool is that it can orchestrate other items in Fabric. For example, you can have data flows and maybe notebooks or some other Fabric items and tools in your data pipeline as these nodes or activities. And then when you execute that pipeline, it will execute those different items in the logical order that you have defined in the pipeline. And then we have one of my favorite tools in Fabric, notebooks, that are then these code-heavy tools in Fabric where you can write your own code and like write your Python or SQL logic, or in some cases maybe Scala, or I think they even support R there. But yeah, you can write your own code. So this is a pro code approach, basically this kind of a Swiss Army knife of data engineering. And then we have a bunch of like real-time intelligence tools like event streams that are able to bring in data near real time to Fabric, that are also like event streams are these like low code tools where you can build real-time data pipelines. But maybe I would like to ask from the chat. Chat, can you tell me what is your favorite data transformation / data integration / orchestration tool? In my opinion, it is the notebook. I like my notebooks a lot, but I would like to hear from the chat. What do you think? And what about you, Philip? What is your favorite tool in Fabric out of these?
I think it really depends on what you want to do. I mean, the great thing about, for instance, Dataflow Den 2 is you've got this user-friendly interface that you can do really quickly. You don't have to be restricted to just one item. For example, you could call notebooks from pipelines. So they can often work together rather than just being separate choices.
Yeah, that's true, because like I said, these tools work together very well, and you can really build complete data pipelines and data orchestration solutions using these tools together. And that's the beauty of Fabric. You have so many different like options to choose from, and many people have different skill set or different requirements, and most likely there is a tool for your purpose.
Absolutely. All right, so next we have a look at ingesting and transforming data. So now we understand what Fabric is and how it's organized. Let's get some data in and store it. So Fabric's ingestion methods are flexible, comprehensive, and designed to integrate with a wide variety of data sources and pipelines. So we'll discuss in this section the fundamentals, where are we loading this data to, and we'll also have a look at different ingestion methods and ideal situations for using one over the other. As you were saying, Alexi, there are different advantages and disadvantages to each one. So first of all, let's have a look at the basic data stores for batch data in Fabric. So first of all, there's the Lakehouse. So this is ideal for storing large volumes of raw data in their native format. And it supports various data types and is highly scalable. You can use this when you plan to perform big data analytics or machine learning. And you can use a medallion architecture. So you can start with bronze for raw data, move to silver for clean or enriched data, and then gold for business-ready datasets. And that gold layer is typically what we expose to users through, for example, Power BI semantic models. Next, we've got the data warehouse. So as the name suggests, this is best for large-scale data warehousing and analytics. And it incorporates and integrates with other Azure services and provides powerful analytics capabilities. And finally, and most recently, we've got the SQL database in Microsoft Fabric. This is suitable for structured data that requires transactional consistency and supports complex queries. So you can use this for structured data when ACID properties matter, ACID being atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. You can also use it when you require support for complex queries and transactions. So in practice, a lakehouse is usually for flexibility and scale, warehouse for structured analytics, and SQL database for transactions. So Alexi, where do you spend most of your time in Microsoft Fabric out of these three?
Definitely Lakehouse. I like my Lakehouse a lot because I like my notebooks, and notebooks work best with the Lakehouse. And maybe again, question to the chat: which one do you prefer, like Lakehouse, Warehouse, or does somebody prefer SQL database? I would really like to hear that. I think notebooks were the way to go in the previous question, but now what about these data stores that we have here on the screen?
Yeah, well, speaking as someone who's been working in SQL for decades now, I quite like SQL database, but it's a fairly recent addition to Fabric, and so I have really gone into Lakehouses and then only go on to SQL database as and when the need arises. So now you can see on screen several tools, but the key thing to understand in Fabric, as always, these tools are not necessarily separate services. You can combine them together depending on the scenario. So for example, you might use data pipelines to orchestrate the movement of data and then use Alexi's favorite, notebooks or Spark for the heavy transformations. So if you need to perform complex transformations, work with very large data sets, or apply advanced analytics, then Spark gives you full control using code. And you can also explore or validate the data using the SQL analytics endpoint. So this is great when you want to query your data using familiar SQL code, especially for structured data in a lakehouse or warehouse. It allows you to explore and analyze data quickly without needing to move it elsewhere. Now, if you prefer a low-code approach with a comfortable UI, then Dataflows Gen 2 gives you a Power Query-based way to clean and shape data without writing code, and Power Query is used in Power BI. This is ideal when you want to perform data transformation and profiling without writing code, and it supports a wide range of connectors. And tying back to what we said earlier, shortcuts let you bring external data into the process, and you can also use mirroring. So all of these can simplify your architecture. So rather than thinking of each of these as a separate tool, it's best to think of them as a toolbox. You pick the right combination depending on complexity, performance requirements, and how much control you need. And in practice, more solutions use a mix of these, working together to move data from raw ingestion through to a cleaned and usable format in the Lakehouse. So, Alexi, I'm guessing you will be mostly in Apache Spark. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Of course, I use data pipelines also quite a lot because I like to build my data orchestration with data pipelines. So mostly it's like data pipelines, Apache Spark, and then shortcuts out of these.
But Dataflows Gen 2 are great if you're just beginning and just want the information to flow into Fabric and then with some transformations. So what do you use? What's your preference at home? Why not let us know in the comments? Now, what is the best tool to use to ingest data? Well, here you can see on screen, we've got a decision guide with 3 different sort of ways to do this: data pipeline copy activity, Dataflow Gen 2, and Spark. So if your requirement is mainly moving or copying data, then pipelines are a great fit. They're designed for orchestration and lightweight transformations. However, if you need to clean, reshape, or profile data using a low-code approach, as I've said, then Dataflows Gen 2 could well be the better choice. Using Power Query, as used in Power BI, it's more accessible instantly to a wider range of users. But then at the other end, if you're dealing with large-scale processing or complex transformations, that's when Spark comes in. It's the most flexible option, the most power that you've got, but it does require coding skills. So rather than thinking about these tools separately, it's best to see them as a spectrum, from low code and simple through to full code and highly scalable. So, Alexi, how easy was it for you to learn Spark? Did you have it in prior tools, or was Fabric your first one?
No, actually, I have been building data platforms with Databricks for many years before Fabric, so I was very comfortable with my Spark code before Fabric came out. And also about this table, I want to really emphasize this is a DP-700 prep session. Learning these differences between these different options is very important for the exam. And most likely you will see a question or two there about like how to pick a right tool for right job. That's like my hot tip from this table, that please learn this quite well when you are going to the exam, so you know when to use which tool and what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses, what are the drawbacks when you use some tool over the other.
And don't just learn this in terms of theory, actually apply it to practice.
Yes.
Import data into Fabric and see what tools can do which functions. And then you'll be even better prepared for the exam. So once data is ingested, the next step is to make it analytics ready. And this is where transformation and orchestration come together. So you might use notebooks with Spark and SQL when you need full control for complex transformations, or Dataflow Gen 2 for a low-code approach. At the same time, pipelines handle the orchestration layer, coordinating and scheduling those steps so everything runs reliably end to end. And if you're dealing with streaming data, real-time intelligence extends this into event-driven scenarios using event streams and KQL. And all of these transformations write back into OneLake in Delta Parquet format, which keeps data consistent and performance optimized across the platform. And that means you can then access it through a variety of other tools, not just the one that you are using to import and transform the data. And governance is still applied automatically, whichever tool you use, through workspace roles and item level permissions. So Alexei, have you any thoughts regarding this?
Yeah, like I said, there are like different tools to choose from and like different use cases to apply different tools. But here, like we are just scratching the surface what comes to these things, because like this is a 1 hour session. There we could have like few hour sessions per tool or even way more, because like each of these tools have a lot of depth. So, and these are important part of the DP-700 exam, and you should really learn them and really apply them in practice. Like Philip said, that's always the best way to learn things, is go hands-on, try them yourself and see how they work. That's always my advice. Get hands-on and learn them yourself.
Definitely good advice there. So on this slide, we've got real-time intelligence. If we just look at that a bit more deeply, then we've got several different parts to real-time intelligence. First of all, we've got event streams. So they're the entry point, capturing data from multiple sources, applying lightweight transformations, and routing it to the right destination. That data is typically stored in an event house, which is designed for scalable storage and fast access to streaming data. You can also use KQL databases and query sets to analyze the data in real time, enabling fast queries and insights over large volumes of time-based data. You can also build real-time dashboards for monitoring and trigger automated actions using activators when certain events occur. So overall, the goal of real-time intelligence is to enable low latency, event-driven decision-making without the need to build complex infrastructure. And then, if you want, you can then save all the data on OneLake and analyze the data elsewhere if you wish to, like, for example, in a Lakehouse. So, Alexei, how much does real-time intelligence, being able to use it, help with Microsoft Fabric?
I think it always depends on the case. Like in some, for example, I'm working as a consultant myself, and I do a lot of like customer projects, and there could be like cases where we don't run into these real-time tools at all, because there are no requirements to get data in near real time. It's like just enough that you get that data in batches, like once per night or maybe like once per hour. That's very batch type. But when you want to get like data near real time and want to be very fast with your like analytics and want to get that information really quickly, what's happening with your business or maybe some IoT sensors in your factory, then you really start to need to consider these real-time functionalities and capabilities of Fabric. But there are already so good real-time capabilities like event streams and event houses that you can really use for those use cases. And from the DP-700 perspective, this is an important part of the exam, and you should be familiar with these tools, especially with event streams and event houses. And also one thing that I think many people struggle with and are a bit afraid when they go into DP-700 exam is the KQL language. It's not a super difficult language to learn, but typically people are way more used to SQL and maybe Python and PySpark, but KQL is also part of the exam, and there is actually one excellent free resource for learning KQL that is called this Kusto Detective Agency. Maybe some of our moderators can link that to the chat, please, so that people get that and they can start to practice their KQL skills and then ace every question about KQL in the DP-700 exam, since KQL is a big part of that exam, and you definitely want to know the syntax at least quite well when you go into the exam.
Yeah, when I first looked at KQL a few years ago, it was a case of, wow, this is so unfamiliar. What are these pipe bars doing?
Yeah.
However, once you get into it, if you've got knowledge of SQL, it's not too difficult, I think.
Yeah, I think knowing SQL helps a lot. You just have a little bit different syntax or maybe a slightly different mindset, but it is a query language. We are querying data, like with SQL. It's not that different. It's just the syntax, it's slightly different, and it's not a difficult syntax at all to learn. You just have to spend few hours, few days with the KQL, and I think then you are good to go, at least on the level that you are required in the DP-700 exam.
And I think another good resource you can use to write your KQL queries without needing to have a Fabric capacity spun is the Azure Data Explorer. So it's got sample data and you can query it using KQL as well.
Yes.
Well, now we've explored batch and streaming ingestion and orchestration. The final piece is ensuring everything runs efficiently. So let's move into monitoring and optimizing Fabric solutions. So Alexi, over to you.
Yes, like now when we build data platforms, of course, we can build their fancy data pipelines and all kinds of things and have things happening there. But eventually, when we are thinking that we are going to go production with our solution and have business to use them, of course, we want to monitor those solutions to know what's going on. So are my solutions working fine in production? Is business getting their data? Is data refreshing? And are those things working well there? And that's why we have to monitor our Fabric solutions. And there are like different capabilities that we are going to go soon through that allow us to monitor different aspects of Fabric, because Fabric is a massive data platform. We have those like surface level things, I would say, like data pipelines and those items that we interact with. But then we also have like Fabric capacities that power up Fabric. And we also, in some cases, want to monitor those things as well. Like, is our capacity healthy? Do we have like a compute power for our solutions? Because it could be a case that we totally run out of compute and then nothing is running, but nothing is failing because nothing is running, or that type of funky situation. So we want to monitor different aspects of Fabric. And there are like different reasons why we would like to monitor. Maybe you can click forward and this will like show these lower bar things here. Like we first would need to, of course, identify and decide what to monitor, and then we are collecting that monitor data there. But luckily Fabric handles a lot of these monitoring capabilities out of the box, so you don't have to build them yourself. But yeah, then when we have that information, we need to be able to resolve the issues and react to those things when something goes wrong. And then we want to optimize our performance and optimize our solutions so that those failures won't be happening so frequently and we wouldn't be having those issues. But yeah, maybe let's go to the next slide where we have these different Fabric tools for monitoring Fabric. And we start with the monitoring hub. So when we think about Fabric monitoring hub is probably in most cases one of the first things that come to mind. It is basically a centralized hub within Fabric where you can monitor your different items that are running in Fabric. And you can see, are those runs going or like are they still ongoing? Have they succeeded? Have they failed? And you can get this kind of information from the monitoring hub. And the cool thing is that this is Fabric wide, so you just have one single monitoring hub, and there you can filter out which workspaces, which items, and which things you want to monitor. But monitoring hub provides you already quite a lot of information, like from typical like application maintenance perspective, that you can see that are my like batch runs going successfully through and that kind of things. But then we have other monitoring tools, and some of these are these more report-based tools that Microsoft is providing out of the box. And one of these is these like feature usage and adaptation report that can tell information about features and provide more of this like admin level stuff for Fabric admins to check like what has been going on or what is happening in those Fabric workspaces, what are like the different things that exist there. Then next we have monitoring report for capacity usage. Like I mentioned already previously briefly, Fabric is powered by Fabric Capacity, that we didn't cover that truly previously in this session, but it's basically a compute under the hood that powers the Fabric. And those capacities are typically items that you create to Azure, and then you link them to your Fabric, and then more specifically to your Fabric workspaces, and then they power up those workspaces. But those capacities have like limited amount of compute tied to them. So like I said, there could be a situation that you have some maybe a little bit unoptimal solutions or something funky happens with your solution and you are just eating too much of that capacity, and then that capacity is consumed and you get into this throttling scenario that nothing is no longer running, and then you are like, what's happening in my Fabric environment? But this like Fabric Capacity Metrics app is one of the ways you can use to figure out. Then there are other ways that I can just mention briefly, like capacity events are one of the newest ways to monitor Fabric capacities, and then there are some community-made solutions for Fabric capacity monitoring, like this reporting thing called FUAM. It's also like a really, really good tool for monitoring what's happening in your capacities. What about you, Philip? Have you run into any issues with your Fabric capacities?
Well, I think when you are learning Microsoft Fabric, one of the problems is sometimes that you have too low a capacity. So if you create an F2 capacity and then you want to do lots of things, you can get into problems very quickly. So depending on what you want to do, then you might want to decide a bigger capacity is for you, or just do fewer things and ensure those things can happen well. One thing that I love about Microsoft Fabric, Microsoft continually develops it. And so some of these tools that we just saw didn't exist a year or 2 years ago. So Microsoft continues to try and give you the tools that you need to succeed. And I think that's great. So for the exam, it's important to know what place you can use to monitor which items. And it's also important to know what is contained in each of those places or apps.
Yeah, I totally agree that also, like I said, monitoring is part of the DP-700 exam, since it is an essential part of data engineering work. It would be cool if data engineers would just build their solutions and build all kinds of fancy things and then forget about them, and somebody else would handle the monitoring. In some cases, there could be like a different AMS team or some other group of people who are monitoring the platform. But typically, when the problem is severe enough, they will call you, the original creator of the solution. Hey, we have a problem with your data pipeline here. Would you mind taking a look at and solving that issue that's going on? So typically, at least my experience is that I cannot just build cool data solution and then completely forget about that, and then somebody else will monitor it. And typically, I have to be involved in the monitoring and application maintenance side of things as well. But that's how things typically go.
And there are some tools that are very app specific. So for example, you might have a long running query in an SQL database. So that would be more the database administration, looking at what's happening and whether that query really needs to be running or whether you need an index. So there are these broader tools, but there are also more specific tools that you can use for each individual app as well.
Yeah.
Right, well, to finish up, let's see how you can prepare for the DP-700 exam. So first of all, as you may have seen running across the bottom of this screen throughout this video, you can request an exam voucher. So there are certain requirements, but watching this video is one of those requirements. So you're on your way. Now, for some people, you might want to then schedule an exam. So schedule it for a month away, month and a half away, 2 months away. So this gives you a deadline. So this can focus your preparation. After that, it's all about getting hands-on. So the exam isn't just theory. You need to be comfortable working with Fabric tools in practice, especially across ingestion, transformation, and monitoring. I'd also recommend taking time to review the available preparation resources, for example, Microsoft Learn. And I would also print out the study guide and make sure that you cover all of the required skills. So to do this, you could work through all of the Microsoft Learn modules for the DP-700 step by step, and don't skip the labs. Practical exercises are really important for reinforcing the concepts. And finally, make sure that you take at least one practice assessment. So there is one on the DP-700 page, and another, for example, measurup.com offers one. So that helps you identify any gaps and gives you a feel for how the questions are structured. So what's important to me when doing these practice assessments is not how many marks you get, though that is important, and I would keep repeating the exams until you get 90%. But that is one goal. Another goal is reading the explanations, using this as part of the learning process. Why is one answer correct and the other 3 answers incorrect? There may well be links to Microsoft Learn material if you need to hone your skills. So if you'd like a quick way to access all of this, you can scan the QR code or go to the link on the slide. So overall, the key to success in the DP-700 exam is a mix of theory, hands-on experience, and practice questions. But there will be later videos on this subject as well. So Alexei, how do you prepare for a Microsoft exam?
Yeah, like we still have a little bit time left in the session. Maybe we can share these tips how we would prepare. I typically have 2 different strategies that I would use. And that kind of depends, like, what is my familiarity with the contents of the exam? I will first cover the typical strategy that I recommend if you are not very familiar with the topic of the exam. Then I would start with the official study guide. Like you already said, the official study guide, there you have all the things that are needed for the exam, and quickly go that through and check, like, do I know these things? And after that, I would use the official Microsoft learning path and go that through at least once. And like you said, don't skip the labs. I would definitely do those labs. And after that, it's kind of up to you, like how do you want to complement your like studies? For example, I think you have some Udemy courses that will help you to prepare for DP-700 and also other Microsoft Fabric exams. Then also I have my videos on YouTube and other great community resources that you can leverage that are really, really good for preparing for the exam. So you can find those. And then when you start to think about that you are ready to take the exam, then I would go to the practice exam and that practice assessment and benchmark my knowledge. Like, am I on the level that is expected, and try to aim at like above at least 80%? Because to be honest, I think that in many cases, those like official practice assessments, they are a bit easier than the actual exam, or that is my experience out of them. And then if I see that some area is still weak, I would then study that more, and then I would take the exam. And then if I tell my other strategy, when I'm very familiar with the topic, and then I approach the exam a bit differently. For example, if we would have now a new Fabric, for example, Fabric Administrator exam or whatever, I think I know my Fabric quite well. Then what I would do, I would first again start with the official study guide and check what is needed for this exam. But what I would do next is a bit different. I would directly go to the official practice assessment if it's already available, and just benchmark my knowledge to know, okay, what are my weak areas? Do I already know these topics, or what I need to study more? And then I would get the report that, okay, maybe Fabric tenant settings, I don't know those quite well. I need to study them more, but other things I already know very well and I don't need to study them. And then I would go to the official learning material and community resources and only specifically study those things and then take the exam. So that's like kind of like a fast track strategy for taking the exam. What about you, Philip? What is your approach?
Well, my approach is, as you say, start with the study guide. It's not exhaustive, but it is jolly useful. It will cover 95% of all of the topics. And then I go, I'm a bit old-fashioned. I don't go to the Microsoft Learn modules. I go to the actual documentation. So it can be several thousand pages, but I find that there's a good button at the bottom left-hand corner, convert to a PDF. So then I've just got one file and I'm not clicking and clicking and clicking. And that works better for me, especially if I'm, for example, flying. So I've just got the one file loaded on my iPad and I can just then scroll through it. Once I've done that, then it is a series of testing myself, getting the practice questions, and probably for us too, creating video courses. I don't recommend that as part of a how to pass the DP-700, but it is effective.
Yeah, that is definitely effective. I agree.
Now, there is a question on the chat. Do you think going through the MS Learning course labs would be enough to get the required hands-on experience to pass the DP-700 exam? And that's from Pierre DIENG 6970. Well, thanks for that question. I think that it's very useful and is a great stepping point. I think after doing that, I think working with your own data, working with importing data and analyzing it and monitoring it, I think that is very important as well. So there are some great labs on the Microsoft Learn modules. I think they are a good starting point. I would expand them with your own data. What about you, Alexi?
Yeah, I would say that like I would complement typically the learning path a bit with some additional resources. I think it can be sufficient for passing the exam, but at least when going through the learning path, typically you have like a page where you have some topics there, and then there are links to the official documentation. I would go into those links and check some like more about the topic there, because in some cases the learning path can be on a bit surface level. But yeah, the labs are good, but there are also other hands-on tutorials and places to get that hands-on knowledge. But still, yeah, like I said previously already, hands-on learning, I think that's the superior and the best way to learn these topics. And you can do these like mini Fabric projects on your own. There are so many like open source data assets available, and you can use, for example, some AI to generate you different data sets that you can ingest to Fabric, and maybe ask AI to make them a bit tricky. So you have to do some like light transformations for the data and clean it up, and build those like Fabric solutions on your own and get that hands-on experience. But yeah, I think labs are a great starting point, but still, in most cases, many people could require a bit more than those.
And just in case you want to know where the practice assessments are, then it is on the DP-700 exam page. So you can just scroll down and click on Take the Practice Assessment, and that's completely free. Other good ways, of course, you've got your Fabric Forge site, and you've also got an 11-hour YouTube video as well. So just Google your name and DP-700, and that will give you access to that.
Yeah, like put my name to the YouTube and like write Alexi DP-700, and then I think you can find some resources there.
And you can go to my website, idodata.com, and go to Fabric at the top and click on DP-700 as well. And you can read about the course and then scroll down, and there's a button at the bottom. Click here to get started.
Yes, so many great resources, so many resources to choose from that you almost have like too many resources, and that's a good thing.
So we're almost at the end of the hour. So just a reminder that you can enter the exams for free, and typically to enter an exam would cost $100, $150 US. So free, great price. The voucher you can get is for the DP-600 Fabric Analytics Engineer Associate, the DP-700 Fabric Data Engineer Associate, or the new DP-800 SQL AI Developer Associate exams. So the requirements include joining the Fabric community, if you haven't already, watching 2 Data Days sessions, either live or on demand, so you've already done one, and completing 3 Microsoft Learn modules from a collection. So for more details, there's a link on the screen. Now, just as a reminder, Data Days is more than a single learning event. It's a shared experience. So please join us in more than 60 days of learning, challenges, and community, where data professionals from around the world come together to build, create, and grow. It's on now and continues until the 7th of August. There are live learning sessions, certification opportunities, study groups, data viz contests, and hands-on challenges, and global connections. And just as a reminder, this is but one of the Data Days sessions. So coming up, there is the Get Certified in DP-600 Fabric Analytics Engineer Essentials. And next week, there are sessions on the PL300 Power BI Data Analyst, which data exam fits you best, and what to expect in your exam, and how to pass. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And Alexi, it's been great doing this with you.
Yeah, likewise. And I want to say one more thing. If you're taking DP-700 or whatever Microsoft exam, I think one of the most important things is that once you get your voucher somewhere or you're paying for the exam yourself, schedule that exam like immediately so that you have a clear deadline, and then you can study towards that deadline, and that will mean that you will eventually take the exam. Of course, if you're not ready, you can always like reschedule and postpone the exam a bit. Maybe with some vouchers you can have some like limitation that you cannot postpone the exam forever, but still you are in most cases able to do that. So remember to schedule your exam once you have the voucher.
And I think you've got a couple of months to schedule it, and then you've got another couple of months to take it after that. So make sure you know the timetables that you've got if you're getting the free certification exam. And you can go into a test center, but you can also do it from home or your office or anywhere which is quiet. You just need a webcam, a computer, and nobody to disturb you.
Yeah, and I think there are sessions like that will now then teach you what happens on the exam day and how to take the exam, like where to take it, because I wouldn't recommend taking it at home if possible. But maybe that's for the other session, then they will share all of those tips there. So definitely go into that session then.
Absolutely. So you can see the time on the screen, all times Pacific. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for joining us. So it's been great to have everybody here, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Microsoft Reactor session. So goodbye.
Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is a part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow the link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.